Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse. Author of We've Got Tonight, The Life and Times, and you guys know these other little books right here, where you can get my books, my merchandise, Patreon, everything is down in that description. So go down like it was the back lounge in the 80s. And speaking of the back lounge in the 80s, no, I'm kidding. We're always thankful so much for the community I'm building here, for all the new people I'm meeting. Thank you guys so much for coming over. Fans who are just specific band fans or music fans or other groupies and musicians and everybody who's haunting and a member or everybody who's just hanging out with this channel. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everything. Really, truly, you guys. Makes it worth it every day that I film these episodes. So thank you so much. And today, you guys, on our episode, we are going to talk about a part of a previous video that I have filmed before. I'll put the link down in the description so you can hear the whole story. Because I'll put it, it's the Bad Girls in the Big Apple, which you've heard Marie and I talk about. And I want to talk about a very specific genre of that episode, because I don't think it should be lost to history, because this was such a huge pop culture moment in history. We're going to talk about New York City and the Club Kids. Michael Alig. You guys all know RuPaul? Well, RuPaul came from the Club Kids. Richie Rich, who is the designer at Heatherette, one of the Club Kids. Misunderstood. A lot of amazing drag queens and scenesters. Michael Musto, who's been part of the Village Voice and was part of MTV's journalistic history. All part of that scene in New York City. And today, you guys, we're going to have a little fat hooker drink because, I don't know, it just sounded fun. So everybody grab your hookers, kick up your feet, and let's have a little cocktails and rocktails. Cheers, big ears. Oh, that's kind of a nice summer tropical. I definitely want a fat hooker on vacation, and who doesn't? Definitely going to swallow a fat hooker more than I would Kip Winger. For real. All right, so we're going to get into a little bit of the history of the Club Kids. Because if you've seen the movie Party Monster or the documentary Party Monster, this is a true story about Michael Alig. And Marie and I were knee deep into this scene. And when we first got into the scene was the height of New York City Club Kids in 93, 92, whatever year we went to. And I'll put the itinerary and stuff right here of when we went to New York City with Def Leppard, and we ditched Def Leppard. Well, the first night we ditched him, we met the Club Kids. Okay, so a little backstory. Now, in Andy Warhol, he had this whole nightlife club, you know, Studio 54, rock stars, musicians, models, artists, people of all kind of genres, genders, everything, just creativity that buzzed around him. And this was the center of the New York scene. Well, he died about 1987. So that left a big hole. Well, in 1984, was it 81? I can't remember what year. I believe it was 1984 when Michael Alig decided to pick up from Bend, Indiana, and take off to New York. Because you guys don't realize most of New York's biggest success stories are not New Yorkers. Everybody at the time was from somewhere else. So he had come around in 1984, had started kind of making a name for himself as a promoter. So when Andy Warhol passed, and that whole scene from Studio 54 and, you know, the factory and Velvet Underground, everybody, it was kind of passé. The Club Kids, especially Michael Alig, because he really was the one that actually started this whole scene that lasted for a good decade, 12 years. So, well, about a decade. Yeah. So he comes along and decides he's going to make this whole scene with drag queens and scenesters and people who feel misfits, and everybody was just a melting pot of different human beings that didn't feel like maybe they fit in all the right, in any real place in society. Well, the Club Kids was that. And they would be dressed up in these outrageous outfits. So let me show you Michael Alig. And you have Boy George. And you have Bjork from uh, originally of the Sugar Cubes and stuff like that. And so there was this crazy scene of people just becoming eclectic in the nightlife, and everybody, like, Peter Gation, who owned the Limelight, put Michael and the club kids, gave him a monthly budget for, because he owned a lot, like Club USA. Peter Gation owned a lot of clubs, but Limelight being one of the most famous in the history. With the church, you'll see it in a lot of 80s. So this is the Limelight. This is like Blitzbeer, a band that I've talked about, whose lead singer became part of Monster Magnet. The Limelight was the place. It was such an iconic place in New York City. So, and Michael became the king of the scene. He would, the Rocketeria, the Danceteria, the Roxy, the Limelight, Club USA. He owned all those parties and threw the best parties. And he would throw these wild, spur-of-the-moment parties in the subway, in the middle of the night, just disco ball, DJs, everything, in McDonald's. All kinds of crazy places, right? So he makes this name, becomes the king of the scene. Marie and I wander onto it in 92, 93. The years blend, but so, well, let me look here. I actually have from one of the balls, it was 1993. So, if you guys can't see that here, I'll pull it back a little bit. This is from, there was AIDS festivals going on. This is when AIDS balls really first started to come along, the black and white balls. So this is with designer Mary McFadden. We have the Life of the Dance. So the Cultural Arts Society of New York was putting these balls on. So this is how influential Michael Alig and his club kids friends, because some of them, like Jamie St. James, he came from a very wealthy, well-known family in New York society. So they all kind of blended in. You had these high society, you had these outcasts from small towns that came to New York, you had the tourists, you had the drag queens, you had the artists, you had the whole Andy Warhol scene, but 10 times crazier and 10 times wilder. And just like with any scene, a lot of people want to be a part of it. And Michael Alig originally did not do drugs. Like the first few years, I mean, they were going on Geraldo and Sally Juicy Raphael, whatever her name is. So Oprah, they were like part of this huge cultural phenomenon and people came from all over the world just to experience it, whether they moved to New York or were just hanging out on vacation. This was the place to go, just like Studio 54 was, for the previous crowd. So this was just an insane thing. So, like I said, Michael originally did not do drugs. But of course, he started to get into a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of heroin and ketamine, which, you guys, ketamine was a crazy drug that was a party drug, and now it's used for behavioral modification. Just say no. Because trust me, by the end of the story, you're going to see why ketamine and all these drugs, really, maybe in moderation, I don't know, but it's supposed to be a euphoric drug that treats depression now in clinics. Kid you not, here in Utah. I'm sus at best because this is my experience with ketamine. I took it once with these guys and nope, never again. Never fucking again. Wasn't my scene, wasn't my thing. But they kept getting, and I always get my timeline mixed up because I know in 1993, so back to, Michael and the drugs and people wanting to be part of this scene. There was Angel, this is Angel, and he was, Melendez was his last name. So sorry, I'm forgetting his first name, and I know his first name. I'll put it up here with a picture. Well, he was called Angel. This is how everybody knew him, because of the wings, because of he'd wear the big old stripper boots, with the 5, 6, 7, 8-inch heel platforms. He would be like in the red or the black, and always this big, huge wingspan. Like I said, I bought weed from him a few times in New York City. because he was always at the clubs in the club scene with the club kids. So, but I remember in 1993 the limelight and stuff because Michael put Angel on the payroll. Like, he was part of the budget and a few other drug dealers, and Angel was not real welcome around the club scene. He was just tolerated, really, honestly, because he had drugs. One drug dealer runs out, then there's another one, so on, so on, so on. And Angel was part of that chain. So, but like I said, I remember around 1993, here's some more stuff from the limelight that we were getting in the danceteria where we were guest cards. These are our guests so we could get in without paying with Ed Lover and all this stuff. So this was like a hot ass scene. But Angel was, like I said, he was tolerated mostly on the scene because he had the drugs. But in 1993, I remember the cops were coming down on Peter Gatien and his clubs because of the suspected drug dealing, right? So things were already in 1993 getting tense with Angel, getting tense, but not with any other drug dealer. Angel had a different approach, different attitude, different, because he's getting paid thousands of dollars a week to show up at these parties and sell drugs. So he's getting paid twice. And Michael, because he's the king of the scene, he is this international club kid, notoriety, fame, partier. Everybody wants to be him. People, it influenced so much of our society at the time. So Michael, was thinking, well, I don't have to pay you for what you give me because you're already making what I would have paid you for the night. Plus, you're making much more on top of that. You're making so much money that you wouldn't make just being a street drug dealer, right? So Michael with his king of the scene hierarchy attitude, and then Angel with, oh no, this is my business you're fucking with. And then Michael back going, well, you wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for me. So things start getting darker in the club kid scene. So they started doing these parties, Club 2000s. Before that, they were just these awesome parties. There were killer drag shows. There was just dancing all night, partying. Clubs with these crazy VIP rooms, back alleyways, 3-story slides that ended on the dance floor. Everybody dressed up like, here's Misunderstood and Richie Rich. And I'll just put these pictures up and let them flash here for a minute. But it was... When Disco 2000 came along, Michael started getting, and this is when his drug habits started getting more intense, more variety, more sinister. So did the Disco 2000. This is like what you would see at a haunted house was happening inside these clubs. So it started getting darker and meatier and more twisted, and just you didn't know what was happening. And I had come back to New York City several times after, Marie and I ditched Def Leppard, and I had hung around the club kids every time I was there. And the last time I was there was in 1995, when it was really dark and twisted, and Michael was just looking so sullen and just so not Michael, not that fresh-faced boy from Indiana who didn't do drugs but loved to have a drink and be the life of the party and the king of the scene. No, this was a totally different Michael, and his roommate Freeze, Robert, and stuff, and he had a couple boyfriends. So let's fast forward to 1996. Because like I said, the last time I saw them was 1995. Probably around September of 95 was the last time I saw him. And like I said, it was still the scene to be in, but, just like every trend, especially in the New York City nightlife, this one was coming to its end as well. So you could feel it, and you could feel just how sinister, and he was just almost with these parties, it's like he was making a threat, like, we're not going to die with dignity or whatever, and March of 1996, I believe it was around a few days. It was around the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, around that time of 1996. And like I said, in 93, we knew Angel was tolerated. But for me, he was just easy to spot in the crowd because of his giant angel wings. And that's why a lot of people bought drugs from him. Plus, he got great weed. So that's what I usually bought from him. And plus, you could spot him out. But he wasn't really, personality wise, someone who meshed with the rest of the crowd. You know, he wasn't crazy, wild, free. He was trying too hard. He was trying to be dominant. And that was the struggle between him and Michael. It was the old adage, chicken or the egg, which one gave life first? You know what I mean? So that was happening in 93. So by March of 1996, the drug habit, the tension, everything with Angel had just got too crazy, just out of hand, and he was more demanding, and he was not getting paid by Michael, but still making thousands of dollars a night when he would have been making hundreds had Michael not. And I'm not taking side, but I'm just kind of letting you guys know what the actual kind of vibe going on then by the time March of 96 happens. So sorry, don't know what the fuck that was. I just took a drink of my hooker. Choked on it a little bit, sorry. But so March of 1996 comes along. Robert and Michael, Freeze and Michael are sitting at their house. Michael has a boyfriend who overdosed on heroin. Michael's deep into heroin by this time. Ketamine and everything. That's just sort of a sidebar, you know, because like I said, ketamine was kind of, heroin and ketamine, I think, were really what pushed Michael into the dark side and really kind of just twisted him into 12 different directions. But so his boyfriend had OD'd on heroin and ketamine, maybe just heroin, and he needed cocaine because past experience gives someone who, you know, they're going to do the adrenaline to your heart thing. That's what happens. So just give him cocaine so you don't have to take him to the hospital, right? Drug addicts' knowledge and attitude. You know, this is what their brain tells them. So they call Angel and he's like, hey, I need you to come over. We need cocaine. My boyfriend's, you know, OD'd. So we need to have this. And Angel was like, yeah, right. Bitched Michael out, but came over anyway. Because he's like, well, you owe me money. You've got to give me the money. And Michael's like, I don't owe you anything. So there was that struggle. And then Freeze and Angel started arguing. So Michael decided, oh, good opportunity to take Angel's cocaine and give it to the boyfriend, which helped, you know, slowly but surely brought him back. And none of this is justified. I'm not justifying anybody or anything. This is just messed up beyond all belief. So it's fucked up. Because like I said, when I first started hanging out, it was at the height. It was the fun. Michael wasn't this huge drug addict yet. You know, nothing was twisted. It was still just passion and free spirit and everybody dancing and converging and music bringing us all together and drinking and Lord knows what else in the back hallways and VIP rooms of the clubs. So when Michael stole the cocaine and they were fighting, I guess there was a physical altercation at some point with Freeze and Angel. So Michael came to the defense. And this is Michael's story and Freeze's story. We don't know what Angel's is, unfortunately. So I'm just telling, and you guys can look this up. There's been movies, documentaries. He's been on every crime show from A&E, 48 Hours, stuff like that. So there's plenty. Like I said, I'll put the A&E one down because you actually get to hear Michael's telling of the story. So this is going to be as accurate as you're going to get from Michael because, you know, things get bended around sometimes. But so anyway, there was a struggle and they ended up like beating him with a hammer and he passed out and he died. And yeah, so the struggle just ended up with a hammer and there was a hacksaw involved at some point. Like they put him in the bathtub and they poured Drano down his mouth just to make sure. because they're like, what's going to happen if he comes up? You know, the drug addict mind starts churning in 20 different directions, and what is he going to do? So we've got to finish this. So finish this, they did. And they kept him in the, you know, while still going out to the parties, throwing these parties. This was all going on. And a few days later, after doing all of Angel's drugs, because, you know, free drugs pretty much, I guess. So after a few days, after, you know, of Angel being in the bathtub, and they poured Drano, and they tried to they hacked him up. And I'm not even sure if it was actually a hacksaw or like an electric kitchen knife or what exactly. Again, go to the A&E one. I know this story because, like I said, I was in the scene, so I kind of saw it go from 93 to 95 and where it was kind of hitting, because like I said, I hung out at the Pinnacle, and where do you go from there? Loses momentum. But so yeah, then they decided to chop him up, put him in some suitcase and boxes, literally went downstairs from Michael's apartment, hailed a cab, put the body in pieces in these boxes in the trunk of the cab, just as you do, nonchalantly. Here, we're just gonna put this in the cab. And I don't know if New York stunk at the time. I mean, I guess I never noticed it if it did, but yeah, just went down to the river, tossed everything into the river, tossed Angel into the river. And of course, this is gonna cause not just even a more mental breakdown and downward spiral. So of course, that's where Michael and Freeze went. They were doing all the drugs that Angel had. They were doing drugs that came to the club. They were doing it was getting more macabre and out of control and twisted. And they made no bones about it. That Michael told people what happened. Freeze didn't, but Michael, because, you know, Michael was extrovert and outgoing and loved the attention. And, oh yeah, guess what I just got away with? Well, one day, because we all know you don't always get away from that with that stuff. One day, things come to the surface, just like Lacey Peterson did. Here comes Angel, rising up from his watery little dwellings. And he gets pulled out of the river. So everybody who is part of the club kid scene, by this time Peter Gation's under investigation, not just for drug dealing, but for tax evasion. Limelight's might be closed down. He's not allowed to actually operate. So this is kind of the spiral that this took. It didn't just take Michael down, it took the club kids. And some of the club kids, like I said, they didn't go down with him. They spoke to the police, and they told him what Michael had said, that they had, you know, unalived Angel. So this, and like I said, yeah, they got prison they decided to plead guilty, but, you know, we were drug addicts, and they were supposed to go under drug counseling, and I believe they both got 19 years, Freeze and Michael, because they both confessed. You know, I don't even think it went to trial. They just confessed and took their time. What were they going to do? Michael had been bragging to everybody, even sat down his friend Jamie St. James for lunch with, you know, tea and crumpets. Kid you not, tea and crumpets. Is like, oh yeah, you remember Angel? Well, we can't. Yeah, just blatantly said it. Just blatantly. So it was obvious, you know, and this was the last hurrah in the crazy, wild New York City club scene. Because, like I said, us Gen Xers, we took it to the limit. But Michael and Freeze took it way too far, you know. So here was this glittering king of the scene of not just New York City, but this whole different pop cultural iconic moment in our history, in our country, that, you know, picked up where Andy Warhol, the Velvet Underground, and Nico, and Studio 54 left off. And we took it, our generation, the Gen X, by we, that's who I mean, we took it to a whole different level. And wow, was it sick and twisted how it ended. And it's so sad how Angel had to end. And But when you're involved with that kind of drugs and stuff like that, this is why I'm suspect of all these new mental health centers and wellness clinics that use ketamine as an antidepressant. Doesn't seem like an antidepressant to me. It seems like a spiral out of control because I've seen it firsthand. And of course, they were not monitored levels. They were, I don't know how much to take, so I'm just taking as much as doesn't kill me type of attitude. So yeah, Michael and Freeze got around 19 years. Now Freeze got out of prison before Michael did. He did his time. He got out early because he was good behavior, no problems. Went on to do some teaching for a college and stuff like that. Living a good, productive life. He did his time, right? Doesn't talk to anybody. Very, very private. You wouldn't know who he was if he was standing in front of you. And he stood in front of a lot of students, so you wouldn't know. Nobody does. But Michael was going to get out for good release, but his heroin problem was not kicked in jail because you get stuff in jail just like you do anywhere in the streets. If you want it, you'll get it. Someone will bring it in. There's mules of all kind. So Michael has stayed in prison a little longer for his full 19 years. Got out in, I believe, 2018-ish, 2017-ish. He appeared back on social media. He was writing a book. He was trying to get some things going on that he could do and, promote and do stuff back on his own terms because that's all he knew how to do. But it was just such a different society, and these movies had been made, and things just happened, and unfortunately he never kicked his drug habit, and a couple of years ago Michael passed away, which is extremely sad because I had a lot of hope for Michael. I had a lot of hope when he got out he would be starting fresh from that kid from Indiana that had just come to New York City. But it was hard for him because the club kids and the murder and everything, it's such a part of New York's historical culture. And it's such a part of our society. I mean, Macaulay Culkin played him, for crying out loud. So he could never escape that part of himself, and he knew he had to build on that and kind of refresh his image again and stuff, but society doesn't always let us do that, and I understand that because I'm forever stripper groupie. I've been a stripper for 20 some odd years. 20 years. I haven't been a stripper. But people seem to think I still am, and that's what I'm going to always be labeled. So trying to, and am I a groupie? It's a little different now, but, society tends to stick us in these genres. And, Michael was trying really hard to get away from that past and start anew. Yeah, like I said, he knew what his name was. But, Martha Stewart got out of jail and started anew again with Snoop Dogg. But nobody came around like that for Michael Alig because Martha was just in there for insider trading. Michael and Freeze, something quite different. So unfortunately, it stuck with him, and it ended up being the end of him, just like it was the end of Angel. So, pretty sad, because like I said, I saw that Michael who had just come from Indiana, that fresh face, the Michael that I met that wasn't totally gone into the drugs, and there was still that excitement and hope and passion and innocence about him. And that's what he had found in himself, but again, society just wouldn't accept that. So there you guys go. I think the club kids, it's really, really important that we do talk about them and that we do keep their memory alive, because they were just as important to New York City as Andy Warhol was, and Velvet Underground and all that 70s stuff. Anything after the 70s doesn't get enough credit that it deserves, whether it's dark or fabulous to dark, because like I said, it gave us RuPaul, it gave us Richie Rich, who is doing Heatherette, and Misunderstood, and all these amazing New York City, Amanda Lepore and stuff like that. You know, it gave us all these icons that we see as normal part of entertainment culture these days. Like I said, we met RuPaul. RuPaul was infatuated. I think really RuPaul was kind of more infatuated with us because we were from Salt Lake City, and Ru had never met anybody from Salt Lake City. So I think that was half the fascination with Ru. But yeah, and like I said, this was everything we were doing. Mary McFadden. We were going from designers from all these society balls, just with these people. That's who they were in New York society, you know. Ooh, Michael Monroe and friends. We were the club kids because they were way more fun. And the club kids were always very accepting of people who felt like outcasts of society, you know, and help make them feel like they were on top of the world, because we all need to feel like that sometimes. We just all need to know how to keep it balanced, because if it goes out of balance, this is what happens. But there you guys go. Hope you guys enjoyed today's little story. Hope you guys go check out some more things. Watch Party Monster. Watch the A&E. Because the A&E, like I said, I want you guys to watch Michael's Word. Because Michael's and the documentary, I don't think they talk to Michael too much. But I think it's important to hear everything from all angles of the story, not just Hollywood's. Because Hollywood's version tends to embellish. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the episode. Everybody who's made it through the whole episode with me, thank you so much as well for being here. Glad you made it to the end. Put down your comments. Tell me what you think about all this, especially if you've watched the movies or you remember this from our culture and it being on Geraldo and Saucy Juicy Ravioli and Oprah and stuff. Tell me if you remember it. Tell me what you think about all this and how it affected your thoughts about society at the time. But, alright guys, and for everybody just hanging out and lurking, come on, join this community. Go down, hit the subscribe, hit the share, hit my bells, hit the likes, and we'll see you next time here at Cocktails Rock Tales. Cheers, fingers.